we're live. Tom Vecchia here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. I'm excited about this one. We got our co-host, or I call him our revolving co-host because he shows up just for the cool ones. Jason Venturelli, JSV Capital. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me, Jim. Pleasure to see you, meet you.
And just a quick FYI, I got my YouTube shorts on. I got like 3 million YouTube short views, and all I got was his lousy shirt. So I figured I'd rep it. Also, Jason JSV's class, he does mentorship courses. Check it out. We'll put a link below. Okay, now we have probably, I would argue, one of our best guests, and we have a pretty strong guest lineup dossier. Jim DiOrio. Now we're talking West Point graduate, Army Ranger, overseas interrogator, FBI, Jersey Mike subs, J3 Global badass, Jim DiOrio. Welcome to the Armchair NBA. How you doing today, man?
Hey, it's a pleasure. Hey, just the pronunciation is DiOrio, but I appreciate the extra I in there. No, listen, guys, it's fabulous. It's an honor to be on. I know you guys are service oriented and service based like I am, and I think that's the most important thing. When we look at when I look at and I evaluate kind of what I want to do and how I want to do it, I kind of look at guys and what you guys do, and so I think we just all see it the same way. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to talking with you guys. So thanks for the kind intro.
I put you in the Italian name. That's not right. I swear this is water. All right. So we're gonna jump right in. And I want to kind of and what we're gonna do here is shout out to Julian, Trend of Fire podcast. He has his long form interviews there. Also, Danny Jones, I believe. Danny's name. For Concrete. So we'll put links to that as well. That'll give you kind of the background in law form. But you come from an Italian-American family, I understand, in and around Newark. Give us a little bit about your backstory, your upbringing, and what kind of made you growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, father and mother, both Italian, both grew up in one in Newark, one in Bloomfield. My dad was a service guy from the beginning. Could have went either way. He was one of 7, 5 boys, 2 girls. Had the opportunity to go the other way, and decided to become a Newark police officer in the late 40s, early 50s, which was a tough time. He was getting asked by his family and his uncles too many, hey, can you check this guy out? So, he basically told them, fuck you. And he went on and became a fireman. So he transferred over, spent many years in the fire department. Just a solid dude, like just a good service-based guy. God bless. I always knew it, but then at his wake, he died young. He died at 66, and now as I'm getting up, nearing 60, it kind of makes me a little nervous. But my brother and I take decent care of ourselves, and we kind of have the benefit of medication these days, which is good. So I really realized at his wake, like, hey, it's all about service, because people were coming up to me that I didn't know and saying, hey, don't know if you realize this, but when my dad was dying of cancer, the only guy he trusted to shave him was your dad. And I used to think, my dad used to get up at 5 a.m. and leave the house. And I'd be like, Dad, why are you leaving so early? Those are the kinds of things he was doing, right? So kind of carried that over into my life. When I got the opportunity to go to West Point, I was a baseball guy. I got recruited there. I had pretty good grades. I paid attention in high school, didn't get in trouble, and wind up going to West Point, having a great career there, meeting my lifelong buddies and friends. Graduated from West Point, went into a branch of the service called Civil Affairs, or CAG, and CAG is the Army's intel, special forces or special operations intel. Did that for a bunch of years, got recruited by the Bureau and the CIA, looked at both and said, okay, what's going to keep me home a little longer, because I had spent some time away in the Army, and I decided on the Bureau. And of course, it really didn't make much of a difference. I was away quite a bit, especially after 9/11. And then, raised 2 great kids. I have a grandson now. Oh, wow. And then married a 9/11 widow who's a tremendous person who lost her husband in the North Tower with cancer. And so her 3 boys are here, and we blend it nicely. And I'm hoping that I've been able to just be a guiding force in their life. They haven't had it easy, but they're really good kids. And we've kind of, since I do my J3 Global thing, which we'll talk about later, they kind of do their Jersey Mike's thing. So they're working at Jersey Mike's together, which is a really cool kind of blend. It's been neat. So having a blast. Life is good. Life is good.
I like how he like glossed over like West Point,
Right.
Army Ranger,
CIA.
CIA, Army Intelligence, like as if I brought up. Well, I went to Rosa Park Middle School. All right, so I got to go back to West Point. Well, first of all, you were supposed to be the Jersey guy, Seton Hall baseball. Your grandmother picked up the phone. She thought it was the Army. I think she hung up. I think his grandmother hung
A
up
couple
at West
times.
Point.
Yeah, she hung up a few times. Bill Permakoff called. Coach.
That's arguably the best Italian American story I've ever heard. So, but my one question is, and you came from a serious class, Pompeo and many others,
Yep.
prestigious class. But my question though is, when you went there, how were there a lot of Italian Americans, guys you can relate with? How did that kind of go? So I always kind of wonder. I like West Point, and I feel like you blazed the trail. Maybe now my son goes, it's normal. But at that time, it wasn't a ton of Italian. So I want to hear kind of that experience as an Italian American from Jersey.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, because of the proximity to the academy, it's well known. New York, New Jersey. You had the Long Island kids who were the lacrosse kids. You had the North Jersey kids who played baseball or wrestled up there. And then you had some football kids, from as far out in Pennsylvania as you can go. One of my really good buddies, Joey DePinto, from Chicago, who's now the CEO of 7-Eleven. Good dude.
Wow.
He helped blaze the path. We just had a nice group. My best buddy from West Caldwell, Johnny McHugh, grew up with the guy, and then we went to West Point together. Johnny was killed in Afghanistan 2010, the highest ranking dude killed. So we run a foundation in his name called the Johnny Soldiers Fund, which is really cool and real tight. We're family. Our families are still extremely tight. His oldest brother is one of my best friends. So we've kind of found each other in what's that?
No, he didn't go. No, you know what happened was he had the option, which this is why I don't like Jim. I love Jim. He could have did the Jersey, Seton Hall, baseball, big man on campus, but goes to West Point instead.
So high school. Where did you go high school?
Yeah, West Essex. I went to West Essex High School. So, talk about a great experience there. 4 towns coming together, pretty competitive towns. Essex Fells, North Caldwell, Fairfield, Roseanne guys. So all my peeps, all Jersey peeps. And so when I had the opportunity, like you were saying, Tom, I get a call. My grandmother doesn't understand the first time, so she kind of just says the Army, tells my dad the Army, and then my dad realizes it's West Point. And he says, look, I don't care what you do. It doesn't matter if you go or not, but you're definitely going to go up and be respectful, and you're going to meet the coach, and you're going to go see it. And I absolutely fell in love with it when I got there. They sent me to West Point Prep School at Fort Monmouth, which is now up at West Point. So it sits about 5 miles from, as the crow flies from my house here. Great year, get up there and just it made sense to me. I was a young dude. I was only 17 years old. Going to the prep school. I was 18 when I got up there. Just kind of made sense. I was like, hey, these are the kind of people I want to be around. My dad, like I said, always, and my mother too, always about service. You're always looking out for somebody else. You're always being kind. You're always being, prayerful and spiritual, and you're always just doing for others. And I remember my father told me something right out of the box. I was struggling a little bit as a freshman because it's hard. It's really hard. It's a hard place to go. And he said, all right, I want you to do me a favor. Every night when it's getting really hard and you're feeling stress or anxiety, say a prayer, but then get up and go help somebody else out. Nice. And he says, I'm not talking you have to do like an hour of helping out, a couple minutes, go straighten his shoes out, or go, if you need something, go get it. Or if she needs something, go get it, whatever. And I found myself finding solace in that. Like, wow, this is good. Makes me feel better. And it certainly made them feel better. And I was doing it just as kind of an act of between myself and God, basically. And as it works out, it just was something that has carried over as we speak today, to doing a little bit more for people, and not really seeking any attention or pride. I think my whole life has been, people often ask, why did you go into the secretive parts of each, kind of vocation, right? The West Point's kind of, nobody really knows about it. Then you go in the Army, but you go into a more secretive kind of serving in the Army, and then the Bureau and the agency and those things. I think it's always been that, just doing silent service. doing more, everything my dad used to say, everything that's expected of you and a little bit more.
Love it.
And I
Hold on,
kind of
Jim.
get
I think you're down. And this is a time to brag, okay? I think you're downplaying a little bit because the units that you served and the areas that you served, you're talking like if it was a bike gang, you'd be a 1%er. Like you don't do that path. What did you excel in at West Point, or what did you do when you enrolled as a ranger? Like like were you a smart guy? Were you muscular? Like what made you stand out with some of the best of the best that had you go down that track and brag a little bit because
yeah.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I think if the whole picture is going to be relationships,
Okay.
right? Getting people to be comfortable, being able to talk to any type of person about anything, and then utilizing kind of the skills that I learned and nurtured at West Point, and then using them throughout my Army experience, and then ultimately using them as an FBI agent in order to kind of uh, to I look at it both ways, right? Like to help people that were in trouble, right? So you're in trouble, but it's not the end of your life. The worst day is the day we put the handcuffs on you and walk you with our FBI jackets out, right? After that, it starts over. It's a rebirth and it's your choice. So I help nurture those people along to come on Team America. Let's figure it out. Let's get to a better place. And I think that when I first got out of the bureau, I had job offers, and they were like, they were making a few bucks. It was good. It would have been okay, but I looked at it, I said, this does not serve anyone but myself. Okay, I'm going to make a couple $100,000. I'm going to be, hey, this of this big company, and people are going to say, oh wow, look at DiOrio, he's doing that. But it never made sense to me. So what I've told you about J3 Global is, pretty. It's kind of almost a boutique type security service.
Yeah.
Where I'm not looking for anybody to really know who I'm helping or why I'm helping them,
Correct.
but I get that same sensation, that same feeling of, man, I'm making this person's life a little bit easier. I'm giving this person peace of mind, whether it be protecting his children or giving him the gaps in which he needs to fill. Here's how I compare it, like for people to understand. A few years ago, I had a heart situation, right? And my doc, I'm sitting in my brother's a dentist. He's like an EMT, a dentist, he's a cool dude.
Yeah.
And we're standing, getting ready to go through into the cath lab. And he says to me, my brother said, hey, that stuff that they prescribed you've been taking that, right? The Lipitor. And I was like, no, I haven't been. So he's like, okay, well, that's a problem. I said, well, nothing ever happened to me. Why would I take that? Why would I take the Lipitor? It hurts my joints, it hurts my shoulders, whatever. Well, when people say, the first thing that I say when I talk to a high net worth person or a client, potential client, well, nothing's happened. What the hell do I need you for? I don't need you. And I tell them this story about Lipitor. And I tell them, hey, it might be a little painful right now because I'm going to go through all your stuff. I'm literally going to rip your lifestyle about how bad your security is and how bad your peace of mind is. But at the end of the day, we won't have a situation where we go into a cath lab and I got to bust through one of your arteries. It's all going to be okay. And they get that. They seem to get that. Or I give them the football adage, right? I'm a guy, I'm the defensive coordinator looking at how I can kind of go destroy your gaps, destroy your vulnerabilities. I'm going to go ahead and do that because I understand what makes the difference. And that again, goes back to service, right? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that we do, as Army guys and as FBI guys. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to service, man. I just love it. I can't get enough of it, to be honest.
Yeah. So now because I know there's certain things you can't talk about, but we're going to get to the FBI shortly. For what you can share, obviously, because you know what you can share and what you can't. What was your toughest interrogation? And if you give any background, just obviously general part of it, and maybe share a little bit about, your toughest interrogation.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you like a general view of it. Again, I'm kind of hampered by not being able to.
I get it. I get it.
Overseas, right? So if you think about the time post 9/11 overseas, when you're dealing with people who really hate us, they hate everything about us, our lifestyle, how we go about doing things, our family relationships, our friendships, our hobbies, our houses, our cars, our towns, our structure. They hate it all. So they look at you, and the first thing 99.9% of them say, which is not true when we do it on this side of the water, right? Is, I want to kill you. I'm going to kill you. And I look at them, I used to look at them and say, well, it doesn't look too good for you today. You know, you're not going to. You know, and so that's not going to happen. So let's kind of talk about how we can get on the same sheet of music and how we can find things in common, whether it be a child or whether it be a parent
Yeah.
or whether it be a situation. And that could take 10 hours, it could take 10 days.
Wow.
You know, so it's all about in the way you kind of present yourself and your ability to minimize their taskings, to minimize the things they've done or thought about doing and relate to them. So I think initially when you're first interrogating, you want to, you know, everybody's looking at you and, you know, kind of like, hey, let's, you know, quick with the fists and that stuff. At the end of the day, that's not the case at all. It's the guy who can kind of see and find some type of level ground with that person that you detest everything about how they live their life, but you also understand that there's one God and that that person was made for a reason as well as we were, right? So that was the hardest thing, is to kind of get past that youthful, you know, kind of uh
Exuberance.
craziness, you know, and yeah, exuberance, and say, hey, I want to do, I want to be, I want to get a name recognition, I want to be the go-to guy.
Yeah.
But over time, you become the go-to guy by kind of, people say, well, DiOrio will relate to that dude. He'll figure it out, you know. And one example I have had is, I can talk about on this side of the water is we had a person that was getting increasingly more violent with bank robberies and had knocked off about 16 or 17 spots. And everybody was kind of going at the person big time. And the person was getting just agitated, wasn't talking, whatever. So I kind of was like, hey, look, if you guys are okay with it, you know, and it wasn't too long ago,
Take a crack at
I'll
it.
sit in. I'd love to sit in and talk. And so I sat down, and the first thing, of course, is, you know, uh, are you an attorney? You know, to me, you know, no, you know, not at all. And I sat there for almost 3 hours and didn't say a word. I just mirrored him. So everything he did, if he shrugged his shoulders, I shrugged my shoulders, you know, and I just look at my phone, you know, just look at my phone and just, you know, whatever. And finally he said, all right, let me ask you a question. What do you want? And it's like a typical story that we've all seen and heard, but it actually happens. It's mirroring 101, and it'll work. If you're driving, try it out. Like whatever the person next to you that's going to cut you off on the parkway, getting up near 140 or 141 near the toll booth, you know, I mean, if you just do something they're doing, they'll let you in. I guarantee you. And so this guy wound up giving up all 17 jobs, and I took care of him. I mean, I did what I could for him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, 17 life sentences. I got him down to 14, which was great. So only had to do 14. But you know, ultimately over time, I think it's all still about relationships. So
Yeah.
that was always the toughest thing for me, was to kind of sit back and minimize their behavior in order to get what I needed
Yeah.
to kind of move forward, you know?
Now, we'll get to the FBI stuff in terms of because we're gonna have a ton of mob stuff to ask you about, but asset cultivation, if you will, to cultivate informants. Is the muscles different, or is it different, or is it the same to cultivate a terrorist asset versus maybe an organized crime mafia asset?
That's a great question. I think it's really at the root of it, it's the same. At the root of it, it comes down to kind of being able to, you know, just relate in some form or fashion. Obviously, the organized crime guy, it's going to be about family. It's going to be about respect.
Yeah.
It's going to be about nurturing that belief that they are doing something for others, right? Ultimately, though, all those guys, it's self-serving.
Exactly.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Every single one, and they'll tell you that. You know, they'll tell you out in the long run. Finding some balance, you know, finding some leverage, whether it be through humor, something I could relate to. Um, Same thing overseas. You know, it's the same kind of thing. Got to find that something that you can relate to, whether it be a story from my military time. Hey, you know, when I was kind of here, I remember you guys struggled with this, and you know, different funds and not having, and they want to hear that stuff. They want to hear what the infidels have to say. So one of the best things I have, this book right here, it's called Very Special Agents.
Interesting.
It's the story of the ATF.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a great story. I'm down in Quantico, and I had kind of a path to Quantico that was weird. That of course I still can't talk about, but it had to do with kind of being a double dipping, being crossed over before I went into the actual bureau. So one of my instructors at Quantico, great dude, played basketball at Iona College for Jim Valvano.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a real quick story about this guy. So he tells a story about Valvano gets to college. He's a young guy. They tell him, hey, you got to go down to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital for a fundraiser. So he goes in, he grabs his name tag, Jim Valvano, I own a college. He walks up to the first person, and the woman's like, hey, how are you? I'm Mary Jones. I'm the CEO here at the hospital. Who are you? He goes, Jim Valvano, I own a college. She goes, wow, you look very young to own your own college. It's a great story. And so my instructor at Quantico is the guy who played, right? So anyway, this guy tells, basically, here's your assignment. I want you to learn about other federal agencies. I want you to go into the library, pull this book. This is the original book I pulled.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have stolen it from Quantico, but I did. And I'm reading. I'm reading through, and I'm like, oh man, this is great. Start to read. I'm like, shit, this sounds familiar. Well, I don't know if you guys can see it, but if you look at that bottom picture, bootlegger Angelo Slim DiOrio.
Oh
That's
my God.
That's my uncle, right? So that's now I had no knowledge of that. So that's my dad's father's brother, youngest brother. So I call home, and I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? Whatever. My mother and father, oh, we're so proud of you. Oh my God, this is so great. Hey, mom and dad, like, what? Can you tell me anything about Uncle Angelo? And there's silence.
Oh no.
I'm like, yeah. So my mother goes, we didn't want to make you nervous.
Oh wow.
I'm like, Mom, I'm getting background checked. Like, yeah, but we know you know how to beat that stuff. I'm like, I have a conspiracy going on my home phone. So of
That
course
was
I got
probably
questioned about it. It's
Yeah.
like, what's the deal? And we used to go from church, from Sacred Heart Church in Valesburg, Newark.
Yeah.
I was a young guy. My sister was 12 years older. My brother was 10 years older. We'd get in the car, go to the bagel place, grab bagels, and we'd go to this hall all the way downtown Newark. And my uncles would be there. I didn't know it at the time, neither did my brother or sister. They were actually in jail, and we would cook Sunday dinner and have in the lobby of, somehow they paid off the guards, and we would eat. They'd feed the guards or whatever.
I love
That
it.
was that was my uncle. So long story
Wow.
short is, I kind of figured out how the way I treated my uncles, the way I live with my cousins,
Yeah.
was the same way I kind of relate it to guys who are in in the life. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same exact thing. I get along. There's a couple guys locally that I see all the time, a couple guys that are really good golfers that
Yeah.
I see, and we just have mutual respect for each
Yeah.
other. And hey, they're like, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. If you're going to
Love it.
be on your side, be on your side. I'll be on my side,
I
and
love
let's
it.
respect each other. And I've always felt that's the key.
Well, it's funny because I'm pretty friendly with Myron Sugarman. We call him the last Jewish gangster, and he knew Meyer Lansky, Longy
Amazing.
Zolman, you name it, right?
Yeah.
So more than likely, your uncle's era was probably Longy Zolman, I would think, if he was out of Newark. So that's pretty interesting history there. So this is kind of the I have a million questions for you, but this is one question that I'm dying to hear. So I think you're like myself. Our nuclear family was legitimate. We grew up as good, honest Italian Americans. We give a good, honest Italian American life. Obviously, tangentially or peripherally, to being in Jersey, there's going to be some uncle or cousin or whatever it's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So I would love to know your kind of optics and your view on the mob as Jim growing up in Newark, right? And then being on Team America and combating the mob. I want to know the differences in the delta of what you thought of them before and how you kind of look at them, now.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a section of Newark known as Valesburg, highly Italian American, community.
Yep.
On the end of my long block, I mean, it doesn't look as long to me when I go by it now. I just went by it not long ago. I had a funeral down that way and went by, and I'm like, this really wasn't that long of a street. But at the tip of the street near South Orange Ave was it was the Campisi families.
I was going to say,
kind of club, and those people were always nice. Like, they're always nice. I would walk home from Sacred Heart School, or take the bus home, walk down my street, and I was a young kid. I mean, we moved to Roseland when I was in 4th grade, so. But I remember just respectful, nice. My dad never had a bad word to say about anyone at all. But he just be like, I'd always say like, oh, Mr. Campisi's so nice, or they give me cookies, and okay, that's great. They're nice people. So and then move it forward a couple years when my cousins were talking about, and then that show Scared Straight came on. You guys remember that from Rahway
Yep.
State Prison, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking and I'm like, oh my God, those are some of the dudes that were, on the corner kind of
Yep.
thing. Not really in the corner, but in the
Yeah.
club and doing whatever.
Correct,
So
correct.
I was like, okay, well, they were nice people, so I don't really see an issue. And again, my father especially, never had a bad word to say about
Interesting.
anyone ever. And I wish my brother and I got more of that. I think
Yeah.
we're okay, but we could definitely pitch out some people.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So then take it forward, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to kind of experience when you're a new agent, you're sitting on wiretaps,
Yep.
you're doing surveillances, and many of those involve organized crime, whether it be through a white collar scam or whether it be through traditional, organized crime behavior. So you would be doing surveillance, you would be, like I said, sitting on wires and listening. And then you start to realize the significance of their acts, and what they actually do and what they're responsible for, whether it be, over kind of an overhear situation or actually finding out this is exactly what happened. I was on a couple of kind of body digs. I was on one that was in a car, in a body that was in the trunk of a car during July on a Route 22 Springfield diner.
Lawrence.
You, got, you guys know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So let me grab a water real quick.
No worries. No, so it's kind of funny.
By the way, go Army, beat Navy.
That was the Huckman
2 weeks
Diner.
out.
Yeah, Huckman Diner.
Huckman Diner.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ironically,
Exactly.
real quick, for the reason why I'm wearing the shorts shirt is that's how I found Jim, and I'll tell you the story. How I found Jim on a story from one of the podcasts, but I also did a story from the Huckman Diner mentioned. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So, then you get, interviews and the like. It crosses over a lot into public corruption, where you'll have, kind of organized crime guys dealing with politicians, whether it be through campaign finance violations or just straight up bribery or emergency bid contracts, all the things that New Jersey kind of tends to bring to light. And, New York, I was in the New York office for a couple of years. And they always are like, we got the best cases. I got to be honest, nobody had as great cases as the Newark office. I mean, just everything, just stuff going on left and right, whether it be guys who had their shore houses and then they would, travel back and forth. There was a dude, Tino Famera. You guys are familiar with Tino. So we had a long-term surveillance and wiretap on his stuff that I think he passed away at this point.
He moved to Long Island when he got out, which I thought was interesting. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Why. I was wondering why. And
Well, he was a bat guy. He liked to hit people over the head with bats. So my old man, as an arson investigator in the fire department, used to tell stories about this dude who used to like to smack people around with bats. So when we ultimately arrested Tino, I got the opportunity to kind of be there. I was one of the bosses, and kind of said to him, "Hey, my dad was looking at you for arson." And he was who was your dad? Freddie DiOrio. He's like, "Yeah, one of the most respectful guys I've ever met." So I'm like, "Yeah, no, I know." And so you guys are like this. I never saw my father interrogate anyone, obviously. Young kid, but he was late 60s, started the arson squad in Newark during the riots. There were shit burning left and right, and he was just going crazy. And it's got to be more than that now. It's got to be 10 years ago. A young prosecutor who worked for my dad, with my dad, who became the Ocean County prosecutor, a guy named Joe Carnato. He's a great dude. He said, "Jimmy, I have some old tapes, some old VCR tapes of your dad, doing interrogations that I kind of had kept." He probably wasn't supposed to. Sorry, Joe. But he said,
nobody's watching, really.
Yeah. Would you like them? And I said, "Sure. Yeah, I would love to, And I put them in, and I'm like, oh my God,
I would start crying.
that's style. That's my style. Never had a clue, so it kind of carried over. But ultimately, I mean, I think it's a target rich environment here in New Jersey. But all of these guys are, they're good family men who just are looking for a way to make a little bit more money than they could potentially make in a legitimate, business. I mean, that's really what it comes down to,
Yeah. And again, I told you some really important questions to ask. And there's anybody who watches the show, I have a few hangups on. It's one of those things that I am straight as an arrow. I don't do any crime. I follow a crime. I deal with that all day. So you see, I'm a busy guy, Welcome to the studio. No, but I'm a family guy, as you can tell. But my thing is, did the mob go wrong where it could have and should have been more of a Freemasonry and become more of a white collar thing? Maybe live off the legacy of the past. They could they could hurt you maybe someday, but maybe go into legitimate business and be like 87% legal. And then you guys from the feds would be like, you know what? That guy's he's done doing crime. Let me leave him alone. So do you think they kind of messed up? I know Castellano was trying to go that way. I think even Carlo Gambino was going that way. Do you think that's where the mob messed up by not gentrifying, if you will, or not kind of becoming mainstream?
Well, it all becomes yes and no, right? So it all becomes kind of a part of flying under the radar. It doesn't matter what crime is out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a scaling deal for us. Can we scale enough to look at every chiropractor who's stealing more than $100,000?
Yeah.
And probably, chiropractors will go, all right, just stay at 99. But that's not, that's not truthful either. But I think that's right. I mean, I think that the bottom line is, are we really going to worry so much about those little onesies and twosies at this point if there's bigger fish to fry? And quite frankly, the federal prosecutors at this point, and they'll tell you this straight up, there's thresholds for crime.
Yeah.
So, it might be $1 million threshold for white collar crime. Yeah. So, so that yes is my answer on the side of, could they have, done just fine, staying mostly legit, like a, I guess like a fictional author who has some nonfiction to the piece, right? Like if I were to go write a book, I would write it in that fashion. I would write it in Nelson DeMille fashion, as opposed to writing another nonfiction about the FBI that I would have to go through 16 years of certifications, get everything redacted, and have a piece of shit, management, as opposed to just saying, hey, 80% of it is fake, 20% of it is true. Let the reader figure it out.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to pass it by anybody. So I think that's the same kind of philosophy of the yes, they could have done better. The no side of it is they physically hurt some people. Like they physically have pounded. And there's guys that have made their bones breaking collarbones and breaking, leg, literally doing that and having no feeling towards the value of human life. They lose that. Even as a soldier who has been in, combative situations, I never lost that. I never lost the fact that life has been taken. That's a life that I shortened. And who am I? I'm not God, right? I'm not Jesus Christ. So at the end of the day, I think they missed it. There's one story that I think brings this home. And this was, I won't mention the name because you probably have heard the name, but a person who put money out on the streets later in life. He was an older gentleman. Later in life, he put money out in the streets, and we ran into him. One of my sources ran into him on something completely different. It was completely different. It was like on, some nonsensical public corruption case that we weren't even going to make. And so I send the source in. We had information that he had money out on the street, so he was predicated. The source is going to go borrow money. And he becomes very friendly with this gentleman over the course of just a few days. And this guy was connected, over the course of a few days and a few weeks. And before you know it, they're talking about everything. Hey, you want to help me out? I'll give you 10%. You get the money out, whatever. Well, in the meantime, he tells, my guy says to him, what happened to your wife? Are you married? Well, she fell, he goes, she fell down the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
And he winds up admitting to killing her on this tape. And it was a joke to him. It was a joke to him, because she was, I guess, the way it worked out.
I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So at the end of it, at his hearing, at his sentencing, we brought that out. I wasn't going to let that go. The money on the street was nothing. Trust me, it was nothing. He was losing money. He was a stupid loan shark. But at the end of the day, you killed your wife, and you thought it was funny that I would have went in the ambulance if I would have known she was going to die. Wow. That kind of stuff always bothered me. And most of the guys in that life are not like that.
Yeah.
They truly are. The old stories we used to hear as kids. Oh, they'll come to they'll send the biggest flowers to your funeral. They'll take care of the wife. That's very true. Yeah, that is it's a warped code, but it's a code nonetheless. And it's a code of respect and loyalty. So you know, when I think about the difference, a lot of times it's that lack of respect for life. Even though they think they have it right by taking care of the remaining family. I live every day with a griever. You know, my wife runs a grief and loss center in Red Bank, New Jersey, called Steppy's Place.
God bless
She's
you.
amazing. She saved lives by showing them, giving them an avenue to live a better life after they have a tremendous loss, whether it be a child or a spouse. I mean, her husband went to work. Good dude. This guy was a good dude. He went to work at the trade center. He's 41 years old. He's promoting, and that's it. He never comes home. He leaves these boys behind. These boys just all they want. They could care less about all this, care less about this and this and this. They just want their dad, you know? And so I never understood that mentality of not having a respect for human life, you know?
Great point. Now,
Yeah.
you bring up, unfortunately, again, sorry to hear about your wife's loss and the family.
Yeah.
And even in town in Scotch Plains, we have status of medal in the town. I think this town lost 16 people from 9/11. But to bring up 9/11, respectfully, as a milestone, the feds obviously looked at the mob one way before 9/11 and then looked at them the after. So I look at it like as a business person, the FBI is probably not much different, and the assignation or assignment of resources in the 80s and 90s, and this is a guess, they probably had your new agent. Damn, I'm on the Gambino squad, or hey, I'm going after the West Side Genovese, right? Versus like now, like if you're on the mob squad, are you like on the Island of Misfit Toys? You know what I mean? Like, give me
Yeah.
like where the top agents went mob wise in the 80s and 90s, and are the top agents working on the mob now, or are they kind of not? You know?
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, that was the place to be.
Yeah,
That and public corruption.
yeah.
And then 9/11 hits, and the misfit toys were on the terrorism squads
Mm,
and the counterintelligence squads.
interesting.
That's the scary part, right? So nobody, how could you look at a 63-page memo that just says all these dudes could care less about taking off and landing. All they want to be able to do is steer the plane, and nobody says a fucking thing. And they're all Middle Easterners. I'm sorry, you know, profiling. Oh, you shouldn't profile. Bullshit, bullshit. That's exactly what you should do, because
100%.
that's traditionally that's what you pigeonholed yourself into. Period. And I could show you 5 million examples from overseas and from Guantanamo Bay. Trust me. So the way I look at it is that's where we were prior to. That's where we were different after. But organized crime, the true um, career agents in that area stayed level through that whole thing and maintain their relationships, because all of organized crime investigations come down to your source management.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky spot, right? And I heard on one of your podcasts, one of the dudes said, "Hey, we were, you know, you weren't. It didn't matter. You weren't testifying against anybody, cop, anybody else. That was it. It was looked at. That was a punishable, you know, offense
Yeah.
for doing that. So you think about that being a great source handler. Those were the guys I used to go to as a new agent and say, teach me how to do this without hurting the guy, without hurting his family, and without hurting myself. How do I do this?
Yeah.
You know, and they'll show you and they'll tell you. And like I said, I play golf with a guy that you guys would know. I play with him a lot. You know, he's you know, he's a
That's what it
straight up,
is.
you know, straight up dude. He's
Yeah.
got it's like he's an old school guy, but he's not. He's a
Yeah.
younger guy, he's an old
Yeah.
school guy. You know, the outside of his house, if you saw it, you'd be like, what a piece of shit.
Oh no. And then inside on
And
marble
go
now.
inside,
That's how
you
it is
know,
in Italy too with the wise guys.
absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, so he's an old school guy with a
Yeah.
young heart, you know. So you know, I think that was what I saw in the bureau. Those career organized crime agents stayed steady, and they still are to this day. Might not be. We used to have 5 or 6 squads in the organized crime world. Now might be one, but
Yeah.
I can guarantee you those guys are, you know, are squared away dudes. And if I have questions to this day,
You
that's
can-
where I'm going. Yep.
Now, can you talk about just? I kind of got it before the calls on the phone to IRS. So like I deal a little bit with government agencies, so like I get it. But talk about the 1/3. It kind of scares me, but I'm not surprised by kind of the 1/3 Fed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like anything else, right? Like the only place I didn't see that was at West Point.
Okay.
The only place I didn't see that was in combat units.
Yeah.
Everybody's ready to rock and roll. What you'd see there is shit hits the fan and bullets start flying, and the guys that you thought were going to run towards it back up a little bit, but they never run away, right? So you look at the Bureau, there's guys that choose from the beginning, I'm going to be the guy who does the background checks and talks to the, nominated judges about their background and go through the question, but don't ever ask me to run with a case. Now, if you need me to carry boxes, from the guy's house or boxes out of town hall, I'm in. But I got the fucking New York Times crossword puzzle to do. I got coffee at 8. I got gym at 9:30. I got lunch at 11:30. I got to comb my hair at 1. And then 4:00. Listen, if you really need me, page me and I'll call you back in the morning.
You know what they call those guys, right? Section chief. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's about right. Yeah. You call. We've seen that example, haven't we? We've seen the leadership of the Bureau. Yeah. And that's the other. Oh, I'll give you so by chance I ever get nominated to be the director of the FBI ever, which, will never happen because I know the guy who I want to be the director of the FBI. I want to be the 2 guy. I want to actually bring in an independent inspector general because DOJ, Department of Justice, OIG, has their own inspector general, but that guy's so overwhelmed that they couldn't possibly work it out. In the Bureau, if you had an inspector general that would just chop all those lazy pieces of shit, yeah. That's my job. That's what I want. The director, there's a better looking guy who looks good in a suit. I look decent in a suit. He looks great in a suit. Let him go to Congress and talk about this guy would kill it. He's another West Point guy. And then I'll take care of that side. So that's the problem. What happens is the 1/3, the guys that actually say they're working cases are taking credit from all the 1 out of 3s, all the 1/3 guys, right? Hey, he's great. Oh, I did this. And you see their report, they write up for promotion. Oh, I did it. No, you didn't. You didn't do shit of it. But go ahead, you could use it, But if they get to the top, they don't know the job. So, hey, what do you think about what we're going to do about international human rights? What should we do about civil rights? What about, human trafficking? What about complex financial? Well, hold on a minute. Oh, I would do, and I deal with it today on J3 Global as a risk assessment guy, where this is what I've done my whole life. There's dudes out there that are telling you, oh, I could show you reports from major companies in Manhattan that I should wipe my ass with. That's what I should do with those reports. And I tell the client, I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but if you use this, you're going to be dead in a year. You or your family are going to be dead, right? So it always continues. So it's the Peter principle, right? You just rise to a level that you're not competent to handle. That's our problem with the Bureau right now. And Louis Freeh was the greatest thing that ever happened to the FBI. Yeah. He's an amazing man.
He put away Gotti, I think.
More than ever.
I think he put away Gotti.
He did. Yeah. Then go to Mueller. Smart dude.
Mueller flipped Sammy.
Smart guy, right? Decent guy.
And then boy Comey.
I can't say enough bad things about that. And I will never watch Showtime or HBO, whatever one did the Comey effect. You got to give that guy a show. That guy's a fucking moron, right? And then go to the next level, Chris Wray. He's a nice man. He's a defense attorney. What people don't know, you probably heard me say this. He's Chris Christie's defense attorney during Bridgegate.
Yep.
I should tell my Chris Christie story, right? Because you guys need that.
You can. Christie, they're welcome here. And I like how Christie put away, what is it? Trump's son-in-law's father.
Kushner. Yeah, Charlie Kushner. Yeah. That was our case.
What's the Chris Christie story?
So Chris Christie, here we go. So Chris Christie went 100-0 with public corruption prosecutions. Now, part of that is when you don't take every case and you only take the ones you can win, but whatever, it is what it is. And I'm good with that, right? So take Christie, we're on our 100th victory. It was a guy from the Monmouth County Western Utilities Authority who couldn't figure out, there's no brain surgeons here either. He couldn't figure out the fact that he was utilizing the utility authority and he would bring in vendors, i.e. a fence guy or a window guy or an alarm guy or a camera guy. And then he would pay that. And then he would use that same guy for his house or his son's house or his daughter's house. And we broke it to him. Yeah, we said, listen.
Wait, who's he? Bernie Carrick?
And what was the Di Tomaso's? But anyway, oh my God, I'd probably get beat up for that. But Sorry, guys, I like them. So what happens is, we talk to him and he says, well, I'm just bartering. I don't understand. People do it all the time. My dentist and a carpet guy, I said, but what's the difference? He said, I don't think there's any difference. I said, they own the dental practice. They own the carpet store. You don't own the utilities authority. You're an appointed official. He goes to trial anyway, gets convicted, makes his kids lie on the stand.
Shocker.
Terrible, right? We're done. We win. Now, remember, U.S. Attorney's Office is all young Ivy League law school guys and girls. They're great. They're great. I had them. They're laughing. Everybody's laughing their ass off. I'm telling a joke. I said, I got one more, then I got to get back to the office. So, yeah, what is it? I said, how come the Yankees can't sign any more free agents? So, we don't know. How come? I said, because that fat fuck, Chris Christie, took all the pinstripes for his latest suit. Nobody laughs. Nobody laughs. He was right behind me.
No,
He said, can I see you? Can I see you for a minute? Don't ever fucking come back in this office again. I said, well, I have to come back in the office. I'm driving back to the office. I was the two in charge at that point.
How many tickets did you get when he was governor?
My boss from DC, the phone's ringing. I go, yes, sir. He's like, did you say it?
No.
I go, yes, I did. He goes, that's funny as shit. You're suspended for 2 weeks.
That was probably the best 2 weeks ever. That was worth it.
Oh, it was good. They collected money for me. I made 3 times. My ex-wife was like, "This is great. You should get suspended more often." Like,
you
doesn't work
tell us. We're gonna because we're gonna do a definitely a second, probably a third part. We're gonna wrap it up soon, but I do have a few more questions.
Yeah, I'm
you gotta
sorry.
tell us the Mark Zuckerberg story because I don't know where the 100 million went either. But if you could share the Mark Zuckerberg story, that'd be pretty.
Oh,
cool.
absolutely. So I get a chance to go out Northern Cal, a group of Service Academy guys, and we go out there and we get a chance to go into Facebook, into Google. We visit a bunch of different areas. And anyway, I'm sitting there and out he comes. And he's, I'm going to take questions. And the guys are telling me, don't do it, don't do it. Because I'm telling them a story about how we still can't figure the city of Newark is missing 100 million. And Cory Booker was the mayor and what's going on, whatever. They're telling me, don't do it. He's going to come out for drinks tonight. Don't do it, whatever. Don't put I couldn't help myself. I was still an active guy. I was still active. So he gets on any more questions. I said, I got one more. What did you do with, what did Cory Booker do with the fucking 100 million that you gave him? And he turned like, he looked evil. And I was like, and everybody's like, fuck you, idiot, and he just walked out. That was it. It was over. You got ushered out.
You didn't get suspended for that though, obviously, because he's a civilian.
No, everybody loved it. Yeah, everybody loved it. I got talked to again because it was a smaller group, but thank God I was on leave. Thank God I didn't fly with my weapon, all kinds of I didn't present myself as an unofficial duty, but it was good. It was good.
I love it. So we're gonna conclude, but before we do, and we're gonna do a few things. We want to talk about C3 again. But I think one of your strong points was asset cultivation. So I'm really interested. Most you cover mob content. Can you give us a little bit about how you cultivated assets, that are that were mob guys? Jason's really interested. I'm sorry if I asked this question for you. I'm just crossing it out because I'm asking it. What's that line of like, hey, this guy I'm gonna flip and I'm gonna use, or this guy's such a dirtbag. I don't know if I want to flip him because I can't just let it go. Kind of like I interviewed Judge Gleason with Sammy the Bull, and his thing was like, we did an analysis, him putting away the 40 families, 40 guys saved X amount of lives. So they justified it. And I get that. Right. But I want to give us kind of, how did you cultivate assets? What was that threshold? And maybe give any examples broadly if you can.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the big thing is looking at the fact that they're going to have to get on the stand and admit to what they did, start to finish. So we kind of look at, when I'm looking at that, first off, like we talked about, you're going to nurture the relationship. You're going to minimize their actions. You're going to bring them on Team America. You're going to talk about all the things you have in common. But then you're going to look at the actual factual, evidence-based allegations that they're going to be questioned by the good defense. Well, any defense attorney. You get a guy like Michael Critchley up there hammering you. You're going to start, as the agent, you're going to start saying, shit, I think my guy, I don't think he's guilty. That's how good a guy like that is. So that's the first kind of threshold. Hey, can we get past what is a jury going to listen to this and say, this guy admitted to 3 murders and he's telling about a guy who just stole a couple $1 million and banged some hookers. Like, so that's kind of how you look at it. Say, does that make a difference? It's kind of like a Solomon Dweck, the same thing. You know, Dweck, can we put him up on the stand, and is he going to get to the point where they're going to like him more than they like the defendant? And if you have that deal where holy shit, they're going to hate the witness more than they're going to hate the defendant, it's not worth it. Correct. So that's the analysis we do as agents. And then you can bring them along, but they're still who they are, and they get nervous under cross-examination, and they're going to get hammered, and you're going to get hammered anyway. But can you rally back from it, you know, in the redirect? So that was always the deal. It's always about the trial. You know, it's not what you can tell me, and it's not what we can get off of what you told me and what you signed an affidavit and what I can prove. It's how you're going to do sitting in the stand, because not everybody pleads out. You know, people are going to go to trial, especially if you have a great attorney.
But you also had your human assets where, hey, you're going to give me information. I'm going to lay off you a little bit.
Absolutely.
And they never roll like you. They never proffer. You just get their offline information. I'm assuming you also cultivated those type of relationships as well, right?
Definitely. And that's twofold. Either just a person who wants to get something off their conscience, or money, right? So, hey, I'm sucking wind because I can no longer earn. So if you can do me you know, it's almost like retainer work. You can give me $5,000 a month cash. Okay, I'll give you anything. And it's the same. If people who are listening, think about when you see something that happens, right? That's why I don't know what's going on in this Moscow, Idaho. Something's really wrong there, because all you got to do is put money on the streets. And my thought is, out there's probably no money to be put on the streets because there's nobody that's taking it. Correct. Right here, if I have something goes on, still to this day, I have 3 or 4 sources that I can call, and I can be part of the game. I can be in it, get these guys some money. That's why shit solves so quickly. Right. So you always have those, you know, for me, I carried 5 or 6 dudes that I knew I could go to. They never were facing charges. They were just guys that I was friendly with, still am friendly with. Yeah. So that's really the difference. So yes, that happens still all the time. And even in my business, even in J3, that's kind of, you know, it's the same thing. I've got special operations guys that I worked with years ago that I can bring to travel with your daughter to Egypt, that I can guarantee, whether it's as an interferer or a close follow, I can guarantee you nothing's happening to your daughter. But now, instead of paying the guy, you know, $500 a day, I'm making probably 15,000 a day. I can pay you a couple grand, and you can go see the Middle East on your dime. That's the difference. So it's the same kind of philosophy. It's how you nurture those relationships.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Nurturing those relationships and building that informant or whatever it may be, you have to, at that point, when you make the contact and you both agree to whatever terms it may be, however you guys do that, you now have to put them on a leash. I mean, because you can't have, like we were talking before off camera here, Greg Scarpa, you can't have this guy who's just going out and doing whatever. Wait a minute, hold on, pal. You can't be, you know, beating up this guy. You broke this guy's leg. You forget about it, killed him. You would end the whole thing, right? So yeah. I mean, hey, listen, you're allowed to take bets. You're allowed to put a little money on the street. Okay, you're holding a card game over there, but you ain't sticking up nobody, right? Like, you kind of told them what time it is, correct?
Without a doubt. And, you know, part of it is whether they're signed on a cooperation deal, whether they're not, right? And there comes a time where that kind of has a shelf life, where that kind of goes away, but they still want to maintain the relationship because of the relationship. So, okay, maybe they got an HGH business, right? Or maybe they got a doctor who's going to write a script on something or another. Okay, do I like that? I don't, but that's not part of what we signed up for. You can't, right. You can't hurt anybody. You can't steal anything. You can't, okay, you got it. Once you're off of that, you know, signed deal, and you're still going to give me information, especially nowadays, I'm in. You know, I'm in. Am I going to ask you as many questions as I would have asked you 10 years ago? Probably not, you know, because I'm knowing that where it's coming from, and I know who you are. I know if you're quick with your hands, or I know you're just a guy that's full of shit that says you're quick with your hands, because, you know, I've seen you in action, and it's not that good, you know. So but, you know, look at a guy who's Stallone's ex-bodyguard. I ain't fucking with that guy, you know. I mean, there's guys that I know. There's guys I know I could still knock the shit out of. There's guys that I'm like, nope, not a chance, you know. So but that's their world too, right? You guys know enough of the OC guys that it's all about that. It's all about, you know, how they dress, you know, who they're banging, and how quick they are with their hands. I mean, let's be honest, that's really what it comes down to. And there's a level of respect for that. because they still feel that they're serving something. Wish I can get them, serving the right things, but whatever.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you in a spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Our last question, and then again, I want to hear a little bit more about J3 before we conclude. You could have dinner with any wise guy, dead or alive. Who would it be and why?
Any wise guy, dead or alive? Well, it's got to be somebody that surrounds the whole Kennedy mess, right?
Yes. Did the mob kill
I think
Kennedy?
Joe Valachi.
Joe
So
Valachi?
yeah, I think so because that still bothers me, that whole thing. I don't know if you guys read or listened to the book by Tom O'Neill, Chaos.
No.
It's a great listen or read. Brilliant dude. He's actually been on Danny Jones' podcast. But get a chance, listen to that, because what he does is he talks about the CIA's connection to the Kennedy assassination. More, it's about the Charles Manson whole thing and all those people. Like, I didn't realize that one of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, was right in the middle of that shit.
What?
No idea. Right? Same thing. But listen to O'Neill's book. So I think Valachi for me would be somebody that could give me. He almost bridges both sides of this thing.
Yeah.
In a way. So I probably would sit down with him.
Did the mob kill
Kennedy? The Bull too. I like Sammy the Bull. I have a little history. You know that with the Bull, right?
No, I don't.
So when he was actually housed for a short amount of time, we actually watched him at Fort Monmouth.
Oh, really?
He was testifying in New York. We had him for not a long period of time, but he loved to box.
Yeah.
And he loved to play racquetball. Now I think he plays handball, but he used to play racquetball.
Yeah.
So the great story. Judge Ackerman's the judge. Charles Ackerman was Charles Ackerman. Harold Ackerman's the judge. The Bull was beating the shit out of a lot of agents who were decent fighters. So they bring a dude in from Arizona who was a Golden Glove champ, who was an agent, knocks the shit out of Gravano. Gravano has a hearing the next day. Ackerman says, "What's going on?" Everybody tells him the story. We got pissed, so we did this. You can't do that. And that's the start of Sammy's, I think, his racquetball career, because we had to go play racquetball from then on. So that's a great story. But,
so did the mob kill Kennedy?
Man, the more reading you do, the more you got to believe it. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, or the CIA. Because think about it, those guys can make people disappear as quickly or better than the mob can.
I will tell you this, and I'm public about it. My previous show I did as a co-host with a former MAID member, and the feds watched that. They actually reached out to me more than once. Obviously, can't speak to the nature of it. So they're watching, right?
Definitely.
Is it feds watching my show now? I mean, if ex-wise guys, are they watching now, you think?
Somebody's watching.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody's always watching. I mean, listen, it's somebody's always watching. Somebody's always listening. Always. The fact that we're together and we've got backgrounds that are different and, not for bad purposes, but just for information. Knowledge is power, man. No matter where. It might not be people we want to be watching. Probably, I can guarantee you, CCP's listening to everything I have to say.
And I'll bet you the feds are like skipping the ads too. They're not even like getting me fully.
No, yeah, they're not giving you. I mean, 171, 962, 43. That's all they're making these days.
So this kind of goes along with your company. When you got into civilian life now, right, and you consult and everything, what's one thing you don't do? Like, do you tape your just like give us a little taste? What's one thing we got to stop doing immediately? Like, should this be in a lockbox at night? Should we tape our things?
I hate to say this because it cuts into my business. But social media, unless you have a reason, my reason is because there's so many idiots that continue to use it. It makes my life easier for open source, right? So I would say, as hard as it is, but we have businesses, right? So we have to be involved, right? My main reason to start it was to keep in communication with guys overseas that I don't get a chance to see a lot, that I'm still friendly with. Well, now that's what Signal's for, right? So pretty good and pretty good encrypted messaging. But I would say remove that social media from you. But how hard is it from your kids? First off, it's a mental, for mental health, it's the worst thing a kid could be involved in, because it makes it look like everybody else's life is fantastic, which is bullshit, right? But if I have, the first thing I do with a client is do an audit of their social media and look at the stuff they're admitting to and point out 15 things. What are you, stupid? Look at this. You're telling them you're away for 3 weeks with all these. We have carjackings not in my house because I'll shoot you. I'll tell you right now. I'll shoot you right from the window. I can't run anymore, but I can still. I'll pick you. I'll put it what lobe of the ear you want it in. I'll put it right there. But ultimately, my point is that to me, for guys like us, where we can reduce it or where we can use services that I have to bury it, right? So still use it, but use it as somebody else. Who the hell cares what we do, right? Like, who really cares that we're out at Angelica's and Seabright eating the best chicken parm? Who gives a shit? Nobody cares. But, you need to do it for your business. I need to do it for mine. We have a service where, if you're a high net worth, that we can make up a story that you just moved from Morris County to Monmouth County. Here's your new house.
I love it.
Beautiful.
So some of the things that he does is risk mitigation, threat intelligence, even event security, due diligence if you need it. So it runs a full gamut. I'm going to put a link below. So final part, we'll put a link below. So don't worry about that. We got you covered. But on the shorts, the way I found you, Jim, you told this story. You don't got to say the name, but you group of guys were raiding a mob boss's house, and the mob boss has some pretty daughters, and they were here, and the son was there. If you can conclude with that story, I think it'll be a fun.
It's a great story. So it's common knowledge that anytime we're hitting a house, there's a contest. This sounds awful, but there's a contest to find some type of disgusting paraphernalia, whether it be drug wise or sexual wise. And then there's that guy gets free coffee that day. That's because we're poor people. We're government servants, man. We're poor.
Oh my God! If you raided Jason's house, forget it. You pay dirt.
So anyway, everybody's looking. The daughters were beautiful, so everybody's like, so they come out and holy mackerel, look what she has. And of course, the daughters are smiling at you the whole time, like, yeah, whatever. Then there's a little kind of house off to the side where the son was living, and we find the biggest dildo of all in his room, and then a pot, kind of a marijuana pipe that's shaped like a dick, right? So that is the thing that got him to flip. Because at that point in time, this is early 90s. That's a liability. That's a liability as a guy. So if somebody would have found that out, it could have been an issue, right? So that was our deal. But it was an interesting piece. Yeah, on the J3 side too. Think about me. I'm an assessor.
Yeah,
I'm your assessor, man. That's what I want to do for people. I want to get your life where it needs to be. So let me worry about all the shit that I've done my whole life. You go do your thing. You be the man. You be the high net worth guy who's saving the world another way. I'll do the rest.
I love it. So we're going to put a link below. We're going to have you back soon, Jim. This has been more than fun. And thanks for checking out the Armchair MBA, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.